Hey there, welcome. I wanted to talk about the proof of God in mainly enlightened thought, in moksha, non-duality, what it is in yoga, what it is in maybe certain mysticisms, whether they're Abrahamic or shamanic or Eastern philosophies. And this primarily comes down to a realization that a lot of people don't know about or they don't understand. And I think this gives God a bad name, even in like Buddhism or Taoism, even in certain fields of Hinduism or yoga that are more agnostic, atheistic. The ideas of God can be misinterpreted or misunderstood by the Western cultures due to like issues with the Abrahamic religions. But the core of what is God, of what is realization, is infinity. It's boundlessness, it's limitlessness, and this is what countless and countless yogis, monks, sages, saints, practitioners, meditators, hermits, ascetics, this is what they realized. In their meditations, in their intelligence, in their experiences, in their rituals or practices, many came to understand that this is endless, eternal, beginningless, limitless. There's no actual boundary. All separation, all finitude that we see, all, boundaries that we believe, they are illusions or impermanent, or they don't really suffice in understanding reality. And that's a big difference. Understanding and realizing infinity and realizing that that's what God is, that's what we're calling God. And this is the case all the way back to the Vedas and Upanishads and, arguably even further in time. So, at least 1000 BC. So this was understood way back then. And then this is, elaborated on and understood with different vocabulary, different individual experiences for hundreds and thousands of years later until now. And that is so different than the God of the Bible, the conceptualization of an anthropomorphized entity that's powerful but jealous and irritable and judgy and all this stuff. So when we come to understand God, sure, you can, in a way, accidentally do the straw man argument by trying to debunk the conceptual, anthropomorphized God of the Bible, of modern day Christians or Muslims or Jewish individuals. But really, if you want to get to the core of understanding God and trying to debunk it or argue against it or think about it and contemplate it for any direction, contemplate it in the agnostic atheist direction or contemplate it in the more spiritual direction or the religious, whatever way we want to understand this, we have to understand that at the core God is infinity. God is boundless. God's not this conceptualized, limited, anthropomorphized human style being. That's just not what God is. That's never what it was. Even in Christian thought, there's so many non-dual Christian mystics out there. If you read their work, they understand it this way. So then this can be the case with the Muslims. When you look at Sufi writings, very non-dual. Same with Judaism, can be very non-dual. Zoroastrianism, so on and so forth. You can find these saints and sages that understood God is all. God is everything. God is infinity. God is boundless. And what that means is God is also boundless love. God is boundless joy. God is boundless grace. And, sorry, there's a little fruit fly. And I want to explain the logic of this. Because I think once you know the logic, and your mind can actually comprehend the logic, it's hard to go back to just playing with ideas, these limited notions, and trying to battle them. And so the main logic, which is all this video is going to be, and then I'm going to extrapolate, is we either have a finite thing, universe, reality, existence. It's finite, beginning, end, boundary, done. It's either finite or it's infinite. I have, kind of subsidiary arguments of why you can't have, a partially finite, partially infinite universe, but we're not going to go there. I'll just say that any realm of infinity you try to add to a finite universe creates this infinite realm of either possibility, or it creates this infinite realm of energy, or it's just not actually infinite. Like any amount of, if it's finite in time, for instance, has a beginning and end, there's no actual infinite space, because even if there was a bunch of space, it ended when the time ended. So that's still finite. If it's bound in space but has infinite time, we come into this reality of like infinite energy that holds the walls of the universe for infinite time, and we have this infinite probability that it actually can keep expanding or doing other things. Like, we come into very complex things that are actually just created by human beings trying to combine concepts. The concept of infinity with the concept of finitude, the concept of space, the concept of time. This is still us kind of using these limited notions that are human-centric. They're derived from our history on this planet and the ideas we've evolved with and developed. But putting that aside, we're just going to say it's either finite or it's infinite. Wholly finite or wholly infinite. Like I said, there's all sorts of arguments to debate why you can't have a mixture purely, but we're just going to sit with these two. If it's not finite, it's infinite. If it's not yes, it's no. If it's not left, it's right, whatever, These aren't the best examples, but just something's true or false type of thing. It's not both. Parts might be true, parts might be false, but then each part is either true or false. And that's what infinity or finitude is in this example. So, let's just assume it's finite. We're going to assume this because this is what most people do. I think we almost have this subconscious underlying presumption that it is finite, it is limited, it is in a box, in a ball, in a, bubble, in a time frame. We have these almost abstract notions of finitude, of limits, of boundaries, separations, beginnings and ends. So we're going to see how if you have a finite universe, how it creates a paradox. It necessitates an infinite universe. It creates its opposite. And logically, we know that this doesn't make sense, this isn't possible, so we end up concluding that it's infinite. I'm going to walk you through that. And it's awesome. To me, it's one of the most beautiful realizations I've had in my whole life. Like, very few other realizations beat out this one in terms of helping me understand reality, helping me understand consciousness, thus my own joy, my own happiness, my own acceptance of things, how I go. There's like a million, literally infinite practical applications of understanding this. And then there's, infinite, more abstract, blissful, internal benefits from realizing this. And one is just the fact that it's true. And when you realize truth, it feels good. like solving a math problem. So if the universe is finite, it had a beginning. It goes and goes and goes. Could be billions of years, could be 50 billion years, could be 20 trillion years, whatever. But then it ends. Maybe it's the theory that it expands and collapses. Maybe that's it. Maybe that is what it is. I don't know. But there's a beginning and an end. We'll just talk about beginnings and ends for now, not the edges or the spatial limits. What started it? What started existence? What started reality? The universe, multiverse, doesn't matter what it is. What started it? How did it start? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. All right, let's put that aside. Maybe it's nothing. Okay, it ends it. Well, one, we could ask the same thing. What ends it? Itself? It's just like a law inside of it? But how does it end? Okay, but what's left? Maybe nothing again? Is it a different nothing than what started it? Or is it the same nothing? You know, it's like, it almost becomes, that's its own paradox. Like this something, or this nothing, seems to actually be something because it started existence, which is, you know, kind of a lot. So if nothing starts multiverse, the universe, existence, consciousness, whatever, and then eventually it ends somehow, and nothing is left over, well, why wouldn't that nothing be able to start it again, like it already did? So we get to this issue of like, well, what started the universe? Okay, what started that? What started that? And even when it ends, it's like, well, that's what started it, so it can just start again. And then it's infinite in both directions. We come with this problem. We also come with problems of what keeps it, you know, maintaining a certain size. What keeps the edges maintained? What aspects or forces or powers or whatevers allow it to come to be and do all the things it does, and then collapse and come back to nothingness? We get to this point where we have these infinite qualities occurring just by assuming a finite universe. These are automatic. You can't get past these. No matter what you say, there's an ad infinitum beginning. This beginning, there's nothing to there's no discrepancy of that after it ends. The nothingness that begins the universe, the nothingness that remains at the end, there's no reason to believe the universe doesn't just keep on creating, falling, creating, falling, creating, falling from nothing, or it actually is beginningless and actually is endless. And some of our assumptions about things like Big Bang and stuff might be incorrect. I don't know. I'm not going to go there. I'm not an astrophysicist, or, you know, I'm not in that realm of study. But logically, this finite universe begets infinite something. So it's not finite, so it must be infinite. If it's not finite, there's only one other option, and it's infinite. In an infinite universe, none of these are problems. In an infinite reality, none of these issues of impermanence, of possibilities, of, you know, expanding and collapsing and changing and doing all these magnificent things that we know exist in reality, none of that's a problem because it's infinite. It can do anything. It probably has literally infinite universes with infinite variations, timelines or consciousnesses, perceptions, experiences. Doesn't matter, it's infinite. It has infinite capacity to do all these things. It could have a billion universes. It could literally have an infinite number of universes that are just like this one, where we're almost predetermined to do a certain thing, and each one has their own particular agency qualities, at this moment in this universe you actually get to choose, or this moment in this universe you actually get to choose, or in this universe galaxies are triangles, it doesn't matter. This is a multiverse theory. Some people like it, some people don't. It's not about describing the details of an infinite universe. It's realizing that it is infinite because it can't be finite. Other issues with assuming finitude, we'll never know. We'll never know. All consciousness would end if it was actually finite, and then we would have no data about it, so it's impossible to know. Other issues are often intertwined with believing things to be finite is this adherence to science, empirical data, reason, rationality, which is good, up to the limits of our own capacities, obviously. But then sometimes there's this belief that it's chaos, it's entropy, it's just random. If it's chaos and if it's random, we can't really trust our reasoning capacities. And thus, we don't have, solid, consistent reasons to trust a lot of our science, a lot of our logic. And so it kind of defeats our own perception if it's actually totally chaotic and random and just, without life, without consciousness, without something beyond our perception. Another problem is we know our perception is limited and false in the sense that we know there are other wavelengths, other beings can see, other animals, sounds they can hear. We know there are particles, wavelengths. We know there's all sorts of stuff that our physical eyes can't detect, our physical senses can't detect, but that we can create machines to detect them in part. We know other animals detect them in part. How much of reality is in that space of undetected stuff that we know exists? We know there's stuff we don't know. This also begs the question, well, why would we draw conclusions just from sense data about all existence? We can draw conclusions for practicality and understanding probability and just doing our best to accumulate data and understand the best we can. But we know it's going to be false if we try to make conclusions about the entire universe, all of reality, with our known limited data. It just doesn't make sense. A lot of scientists, a lot of people at the head of their subject and research, they're not going to make these conclusions. They're going to have hypotheses and theories, and they're going to try and gather more and more evidence, more and more data. But most people, I think, or a lot of people at least, they draw conclusions. They come up with this rigid belief system. And the point is, God is not a belief system. God is the infinite existence. And I'll probably in another video go into what that means. What does it mean to be infinite? What conclusions happen from that, if there is any conclusions? What ways of life occur? But the point is, if it's not finite, which we can tell that it can't be, it has to be infinite. And that's what God is. God's not some dude that we drew or wrote about. God's not some limited notion. God's not a myth. God's not a dream. God is the infinite existence, the infinite reality itself. And it doesn't matter if we believe it. It doesn't matter necessarily if we align with any specific religion or spirituality. But it is false if we don't realize infinity, if we don't realize what reality is. And reality will never be able to be summarized in words. We know this. This is obvious. And so God, just like the Tao, just like the Buddhist emptiness, is beyond concept. beyond limitation, beyond all subjugation from our perception. So, thanks for listening. Om Sai Ram.